Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is our first joint webinar with Devo and LogicHub, which has just recently been acquired by Devo, so the broader Devo family. We're going to be covering really an introduction to this new combination of SIM and SOAR that this acquisition represents. But before we get started, I'm going to introduce our speakers. This is a recorded webinar, and of course, we'd like to be interactive, so please type in any questions you have at any point. It will be available on demand for anyone who missed the live viewing with the same link that you logged in with here. So before I get started, let's go ahead and introduce our speakers today. We're joined by Kumar Saurabh, who is the Vice President of SOAR Strategy and Integration, and he was a co-founder of LogicHub and also a co-founder of Sumo Logic, extensive industry experience in the industry. We're also joined by Stephen Morrow, who's Senior Director of Sales Engineering, who will be presenting. And I apologize, not on the slide, Monty Yao, who is the Director of Sales Engineering coming in from the LogicHub side. So I think we've got a great representation of our audience here. Just in case you didn't see the news, it's about a week old now, but Devo has just recently acquired LogicHub and very excited about this combination. And it really now extends Devo's leadership with their cloud native SOC really to integrate next-gen SOAR capabilities. And we'll talk about and give you examples of exactly what that means. But really, it offers now kind of an end-to-end solution. So we're going to be talking and introducing this really to the Devo customer base to start, but we'll talk broadly about the implications of this and what it means for the industry. So I think, Kumar, I'll let you take it over here and talk about what this combination of SIM and SOAR really represents.
Perfect. Thank you, Willie. So I'm super excited to talk about, the synergy between Devo and LogicHub, but under the hood, the technologies, right? The SIM technology and the SOAR technology. What I have seen in the industry working with several security teams, that the same people who are running SIMs also over time mature and start to grow and adopt and use SOAR very effectively. I mean, SIM for a number of years is pretty much the centerpiece of a security operations center, even to this day, right? But one thing that we noticed is, you cannot effectively get value out of a SOAR system unless and until you have a very capable SIM in the background, because almost everything starts with data, right? Detection, you can't detect something unless you don't have the data, unless and until you can find the signals you're looking for in the data. So data is the foundation, and SIM is the tool, is the technology that makes all of the security data available to the security teams, security operations teams in particular. But at the same time, especially in the last 5-6 years, what we have seen is barely there is any security team that will say they have all the headcount, they have all the people, they have plenty of numbers of security analysts or incident responders. Every team struggles with the challenge. They don't have enough talented people, enough qualified people to handle the security operational challenge. And so more and more teams are looking to find ways that they can make their security teams more efficient, more effective, and automation, and especially orchestration, automation, SOAR technology in general is a great tool technology to drive in that direction. So there is a very natural fit between SIM and the SOAR. But I think what is really important about, and from the first meeting itself, talking to Devo folks, the vision about this autonomous SOC, where more and more of the work is being done with the help of advanced technologies like automation, like AI, like machine learning. And this is where I think LogicHub's automation technology is such a great fit in driving towards Devo's vision of autonomous SOC for everybody, right? And so we'll talk a little bit more about these technologies in detail. So let's take a real life example and see how security teams get benefit of it. The number one use case that we have found in many of our deployments and customers and so on is really around alert triage. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then beyond alert triage, now you have incidents that you're very confident something bad has happened. And there is a whole playbook associated with that. So how do you take the incident response, additional investigations you're doing, how do you do it in a fully automated way? And given that we're talking of doing things in a fully automated way, the benefits of automation are brain dead obvious, but the challenge mostly is it's really hard to get real life use cases, everything but the most common trivial use cases. Like once the use cases become production grade, become real life scenarios, automating those becomes very hard. And this is where no code and low code automation technologies are pushing the envelope. How do I make sure that most security teams, if they have a workflow that they can draw on a whiteboard, or if they have documented it on their internal wikis, how can a security analyst, how can an incident responder, a security engineer, right, without knowing how to code, can turn that playbook into automation? And we'll talk a little bit about some of the very recent and cutting edge developments we have done in making automation easier for almost every security team. So before we talk about no-code automation, let's take a step back and kind of look at, and we have seen this across internal SOC, many larger companies, 5-person SOCs and so on. There will be a team of analysts. Sometimes it could be one person doing this part-time because they have 5 other responsibilities, or on the other end of the spectrum, you might have a team of 50 to 70 or even 100 plus analysts because they have to deal with thousands of alerts that come in. And on every alert, they're spending 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes doing investigations, right? And in more mature teams, we work with many of these teams where these playbooks are documented on the wiki. So typically the workflow is alert comes in, people are taking ownership of alerts, going to an internal wiki, looking at the playbook, and then executing the playbook by hand. And one of our customers, and this is very common, the SLO, the service level objective was that, hey, let's look at every alert and triage it in 20 minutes. Unfortunately, like 60 to 70% of the time when they measured, they actually missed that SLO. And that's the downside of doing it by hand. So one thing that can actually happen, and as a result of this, what you're doing is you're barely able to keep up with all the alert volume. And the analysts are constantly struggling with the level of alert volumes. I've interviewed and met analysts whose daily job was to go through 50 to 100 alerts every single day. And it can get very mundane, and analysts get burned out and so on. But that is a perfect use case for automation. And once you have the automation, the first 18, 19 minutes out of the 20 minutes where they are going to all of these different sources and trying to get the entire picture and then figure out what is the right response action that I want to take, that entire phase can be fully automated. And the analyst experience becomes, they go from looking at literally, I would say, hundreds of alerts every single day to looking at 5, 7, 10, 20 at most cases in a single day, many times much less. And the beautiful part of it is by the time they get to that case page, they have every bit of information that they needed already presented on the screen. The decision has been taken. Hey, it's a false positive. Here is why this particular alert you can safely ignore. Or this particular alert signifies something really bad is going on. And in terms of response action items, they become one-click response action items. So the result is what used to take 20 minutes typically starts taking less than 2 minutes. And furthermore, 90 to 95% of the alerts people get, and sometimes 99% plus, right? So you might be getting thousands of alerts, a single day, and you're down to like 10, 20, 30 cases. So massive reduction in the amount of work that the analysts have to do. And again, this is something that we have seen that customers implement and benefit and operationalize at various different companies of different sizes. And some of the results is one of the early customers, this is probably 3-4 years ago, 5,000 alerts every single day. And they found like 93% of them were simply can be automatically decided. But one challenge that we have always found with automation, one objection that you always run into is the analysts in the beginning are always going to be a little bit wary of making the wrong decision, taking the wrong action, and they're not able to trust the automation. And one of the questions is, how do I know that it's making the right decisions, I'm taking the right actions? And that is where one of the LogicHub's strengths comes into play, and this is what we call decision automation. And what we have shown at various enterprises, that the accuracy with which we can make alert triage decisions is actually better than human accuracy. And at one of the customers, we measured like how much errors do analysts make. So we took a random sample of like 30 alerts, and we went through what did the analysts do and how many of them the automation did the same thing. Out of 30, 85%, the automation and the analyst said exactly the same thing. And the other 15% that was different, we looked at every single one of them and we said, who made the right decision? And very often, analysts would make the wrong decision. And almost always the reason was the playbook was 13 steps, but most people only did 5. But once you have automated it, once you have codified it, there is no skipping steps, right? It's happening at machine speed time after time. And the one case where it was off was we discovered that there was some knowledge, some tribal knowledge that the analyst had that was not encoded in the playbook. So it even gives an opportunity to improve the playbooks over time as you discover new factors, new reasons why an alert is a false positive or is a real incident. And again, we're modeling how analysts make decisions, right? So typically when you look at what does an analyst do when they get an alert triage, they try to go find all the contextual information around that alert to figure out, is it real? Is it bad? What is the right action I need to do? And that is all that is done by the machine, and the logic is fully automated. And in order to match human analysis, we use a heavy dose of machine learning. So for example, a human eye can very easily look at a chart and detect a spike, right? But can they actually automate it with a single line of code? That is the power of LogicHub, because spike detection, for example, outlier detection, things of that nature, you can literally do with one line of code. And almost with any kind of machine learning example and machine learning technology, if it cannot learn from data, if it cannot learn from human feedback, it will keep making the same mistake again and again, right? So one of the key elements of any kind of learning system is, can it learn from human feedback? And so we use supervised machine learning techniques that can learn from both data and can learn from human feedback. In fact, you can build baselines of behavior, and this decision engine can automatically learn from those baselines. So it's trying to make as good and many times even better decisions than human beings can do, because there is simply too much data all around. And so now I'm going to shift a little bit. We talked a lot about making these decisions, but at the end of the day, right, whether you're making decisions or taking actions, you need to be able to talk to your entire technology stack. And very often you'd work with security teams that might be 5 people, but you look at how many tools they have got. They have 25 to 30 tools in their stack. And a human being can just go open a new tab and look at all these different things. And that's what takes time. And before you know it, you have to spend 10 minutes logging into 5 different systems. And so what LogicHub, one of the core capabilities, and in fact, that is something that we are really strong on, is be able to support any and all commercial systems that have an API. And even if you have an internal system, if it has an API, you can actually build an integration with like 10 to 20 lines of Python code literally in half an hour, right? And one of the capabilities that we have that is quite unique is that we offer new integrations at no cost to our customers. And that speaks to the power of the framework that we have built, that we can actually, if the API is documented and if we have access to the API, it literally takes less than half a day for our engineering team to crank out. And most of the time we take is actually to do the testing, to validate it works, corner cases and things like that, and before we release it. So the ability to support any and all tools in the security stack is a very, very important capability of any automation technology. And I alluded a little bit about we really don't want the analyst to spend time with thousands of alerts when really 30, 40, or 50 of those are real incidents, right? We want to do that work for them, right? And this is where the case management system comes very handy, right? So case management system becomes one page where the analyst can go in and get all kind of contextual information, all kind of actions they take, and it's powered by automation, right? So we are trying to remove as much repetitive, mundane work that people get. The one big thing is, right, with many of the case management systems, they are so inflexible that analysts have to change their workflow to match the case management system. But it should be the other way around. The case management system should be able to model any kind of workflow that a security team has. Like security teams should not have to change their workflows to fit the case management system. And that's one of the core capabilities. Like these cases are driven by templates and workflows and automation. And what we have found is it helps security teams collaborate much better because they're looking at the single pane, they're taking their best practices and codifying it. And overall, they're doing things much more efficiently. So one of the big things about this is, and this has been the experience, that many times with automation, right, if you're running manually, let's say you're doing a manual investigation, you're running 20 searches. You're running 20 searches in 20 minutes. But if you're doing an automated way, you're running 20 searches in 1 second. And this is where I want to hand it off to Stephen to talk a little bit about if the backend can't support it, it's not going to work. So
thanks, Kumar. So yeah, from a Devo perspective, the real piece of trying to deliver the autonomous SOC is how do we scale? How does the AI be able to execute all those searches Kumar just said in a time frame where you can get the results back? If you think about it like a highway, right? The traffic just builds up. It's just a constant traffic jam. And so that's kind of what we've tried to illustrate here. With Devo, speed has been less of an issue, right? It's something we're very, very quick and on our return. And so as you look at this diagram, you can see the ingest on most traditional SIEMs is relatively slow. It takes quite a bit of time to get in, where with Devo, often the data comes in millisecond and a half. It's very, very quick, which allows us to get the data in, and then querying that data out, we're incredibly quick. So as something autonomous like LogicHub starts to reach up into the SIEM to pull that data, which is the foundation of all of these use cases, it gets constrained on a traditional SIEM on trying at each of these points, the ingest point and the query point, so that it can't necessarily deliver it. And we've seen this in the market. If you look at it over time, there's been lots of different automation technologies that have come to bear. And I think the failing in the market overall has been the fact that the majority of these technologies didn't have the underlying platform to deliver the data at speed and accurately so that it can make the decisions that was promised. With Devo, we eliminate that. We eliminate all of the different bottlenecks so that all the queries come through quickly, all the ingestion comes through quickly, and it allows something like LogicHub to be able to just run as many queries as it wants and execute on that automation vision very quickly, as well as reducing those alerts. We know that everybody's saturated with alerts. There's more alerts out there than anyone can possibly examine in a day. I have yet to talk to a SOC leader who says, give me more alerts. I need those. you're looking for reductions, right? We're always looking for reductions. And by being able to query quickly and get rid of these, we can get rid of these within seconds with Devo. So that's the power of combining these two technologies to start to bring that autonomous vision to bear. At the end of the day, it starts to do several things for the business. One of them is it makes your analysts cost cheaper, right? You have an option to hire more level 2 analysts, more scaled analysts who aren't necessarily spending all their time trying to diagnose single use cases, but are actually able to work against the automation that this provides and to actually work with the autonomous SOC, which ultimately leads to better detections, right? At the end of the day, you want to find these alerts, but you really want to find the one alert, the one that's actually matters, that's a risk to your business, that's going to potentially, put your business at risk. That's what we're trying to deliver here. And it all boils down to the fact that you'll get more return on your investment from using LogicHub combined with Devo. So from this point, what we'd like to do is get into a bit of a demonstration right after we talk about the Audra piece. So Kumar, if you could you go through some of the keys?
Absolutely. So one of the, even the teams that have hundreds of these playbooks running in production, right? We start noticing that there is literally a journey that security teams have gone through, right? When we work with security teams that are much earlier in the journey, they're first trying to eliminate blind spots. And I think this is where, Devo is a very big piece of the puzzle, because it takes care of bringing all the data in. You're able to query it at tremendous speeds, and you have complete visibility into your technical stack, your security stack that you're trying to monitor. But like Steven said, yet to meet a team that says, give me more alerts, right? So one of the things every security team needs is, please get rid of the noise, right? And that's a very, very, very important step in the process. And over the last 15, 16, and even more years of working with different security teams, it amazes me that even to this day, in some really well-funded and really sophisticated teams, as much as 95%, 98% of the alerts are not true incidents, right? Even to this day. And 70%, 80% of the time that people actually spend, they're actually trying to dig through enough contextual data, because they don't have it at their fingertips, right? And they're taking 20 minutes to get the data. And I think that's a really time-consuming step. Now, if you're doing a very unique analysis, you're doing a hunt, you're chasing down an incident, that's understandable. But if you're doing the same thing for the same alert that fired 30 times every single day for last 6 months, that's a lot of human time wasted. And so how do we make the security teams more efficient by delivering all the information that they need right on a single page? And one of the things many people, and this happens, for example, a very common thing that we hear is you get a CrowdStrike alert, for example. I'm just going to pick an endpoint. You might get 20, 30, 40 different, and sometimes the alert will simply say, we noticed this executable running. We think it looks suspicious. You should investigate. But what is an analyst supposed to do? And so there is the investigation part, the context part that you have to gather. But at the end of the day, what is the action you're going to take? You have to remove the box. Do you take the box off the network? Do you send an email notifying someone? And so there might be response playbooks. That can easily take another 10, 15 minutes. So how do you make the response one click? So it doesn't take minutes to do that. And one of the biggest things is, and this is where people are a little bit hesitant of going into automation, because while automation is fast, it's not always that flexible. And people are very creative, very flexible. So this is where things like AI and machine learning actually become really critical pieces of automation to make what the automation do match or exceed how humans would triage it, how humans would investigate it, how a skilled analyst, level 2, level 3 would respond to a particular incident. The end result really is, how do we make analysts and incident response team and security operation team in general, how do we make their life easier? One thing I do want to touch on is there are actually two big problems, even today, right? And we're making a big dent in with security automation technologies. We talk to a lot of teams, phishing, for example, a very common example, right? And most people have to deal with the problem. And yet when you ask them, right, what is the playbook? They will talk you through 5, 6, 7 steps. Then you talk to another team, there are different set of 7 steps. And after we have done the implementation, maybe at 20, 30 different places just in the last year, you realize that here are the top 20 things that you can do when you get a phishing alert. So the playbook, the knowledge that goes towards building this really rich playbooks, most of the security teams don't have that know-how. So lack of that know-how of what are the best playbooks out there, that's one big. But more sophisticated teams actually have a pretty good handle on those. And they struggle with, how do I take this playbook and how do I automate in half a day without having to hire 2 developers on my team, right? And this is where the no code and what we have done with Audra is we have encoded the knowledge of really advanced playbooks. So the chatbot, Audra is a chatbot that can help you with playbook building. So you don't need to know playbooks. If you say, hey, I want to automate phishing triage, it can walk you through those 15, 17 steps. And you're simply interacting like you're talking to somebody on Slack, and it builds the playbook for you. It writes the code for you, so you don't have to write the code. And that runs in the background for you triaging phishing, for example. So that is something that we're continuing to invest in. And our goal really is to make automation much more accessible to security teams of all sizes. So with that, I think
we're going to switch into a demo here. I see some questions coming in. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so please keep them coming. But I think now we'll switch over, and Stephen and Monty will step us through a demo of the combined solution.
Yeah, appreciate it. So just before we get started into the actual demonstration, just to kind of set things up, we're really focused on this particular webinar on customers that already know Devo. If you don't already know Devo, there'll be a future webinar in just a few days where we're going to go much more in depth to the Devo side. But for this one, because these recordings tend to live on, that's what we're going to cover here. So what I'd like to start doing then, without further ado, is to share some of this. Just give me one moment. Could be a little bit of a... All right. So what you're looking at here is Devo, and we've already built the query. Ease of use is very important for Devo, right? It's for customers of Devo, you already know this. You're already working with this product. And so we've already built this particular query to go ahead and do the detection for you. And in this case, it's IPs with a known threat there. You can see C2 Slingshot APT has been detected in our network. And we did that through our lookups, right? So we've enriched this with data, finding those IPs. We've got the count and the distinct sources. So if we wanted to make this an alert, all we have to do is click alert, right? And it instantly makes an alert. And since you guys are familiar with Devo, you're familiar with how that works. At the end of the day, ease of use has been our big focus, and we're continuing that with LogicHub. We want to make sure that same ease of use comes through. So Monty, if you could, it'd be great if you could just walk us through a little bit of the LogicHub part. And show us how that alert would feed into LogicHub to then generate actions.
Yeah, absolutely. So in LogicHub, we will automate all the tasks that analysts typically perform. I'll walk you through this particular playbook that we use to block and quarantine the sources. So very first step here is just bring the data from Devo to LogicHub. This is a simple query. You can see, there's distinct IPs and how many sources are connecting to it, right? So this is a very simple node or step that the playbook is configured to do. I'll show you a bit of how to build this playbook in later sessions here. The next step, just like you can do in Devo, you can aggregate. You don't want to try to block 26 repeatable IP addresses, so you aggregate those. And the next thing you want to do is be able to query from the Devo platform via a module to say, okay, how many sources are actually connecting to those destination IPs? And here is a module that you can actually go into the module to see exactly what does a module do. A module is a repeatable set of tasks that can be plugged into different playbooks. And here, I'm just going to go edit that a little bit to see. So here there's some input, and there is a Devo search here, right? So these are 5 different results come back from Devo, and this is the query dynamically configured by the destination IP address. So this is actually querying Devo live while you have the newer destination IP addresses. But wait, let me just show you a little bit more to explain this further a little bit. With the typical SIM, that you kind of get used to, or I'm used to, these are 5 concurrent queries. Most of the SIM out there will give you a throttle limit, right? So you're not going to be able to search in 5. You're allowed to search in 2. Otherwise, you could be hammered down or slowing down the SIM for others, right? So with the Devo, the platform is fully cloud-based, scalable. You issue 5 or issue 5,000 is not going to be a problem, right? So that's one thing that, in my experience in the last week, I found very fond of. So let me just cancel out of this this module definition here. So what we have, after we query the Devo, we have results back to say, okay, how many sources actually hitting the destinations, and this is encapsulated in an array. Here you can see there's 5 or 6 different sources hitting the same destination. What we want to do here is to be able to expand that array, right? So this is showing there's 25 different sources, and then the next simple step is to extract the source IPs and then be able to quarantine that. And this is calling another module. Inside it can be any other endpoint solutions or quarantine solutions. Okay. Now going back to the other branch, you also have the destination. You don't want it, people to continually hit those IPs, so you extract those IP addresses, and then you blocking it via a module call, right? So a playbook like this, will automatically execute from the beginning to end, right? So this is what constitutes is a playbook automated, and this is what we call a licensable playbook. The machine will execute it automatically, and you can see it how you're executing it. So here, this is seeing prior executions. I have a couple of runs in the past. It processed 30 different IP addresses, a combination of sources and destinations, blocking or quarantine. It took about 30 of them, right? If you do the math, typically if you do quickly, you can do maybe blocking 1 IP in a minute. That's 30 minutes, right? In LogicHub, the playbook executed in 24 seconds. Right? So that's 2 magnitude of time reductions here, right? Obviously, you do have to consider the time to create that playbook, and this is what I'm going to share with you guys next with this. So simply creating a playbook is very easy. You click that new playbook. It can start from blank, and then this is a guide playbook builder. It will teach you how to do this. You give a playbook a name, and then you select a time range you want to bring the test data. You can select a day. You can select the last 15 minutes. I'm choosing an hour here. I'm going to connect to a SIM, right? So there are different SIMs LogicHub work with. The very top one is Devo here. From Devo, there is a thing called event type, which is a query definition to query the source. And this will bring that data into LogicHub live. So while I'm doing this is all running in real time here. So it will bring back 1 or more records here. This is probably the most time-consuming part of it. It takes by maybe a few seconds. But I would cover what is event type later on in this session here. Here, the UI do give you constantly feedback options, so you can provide your feedback here. And in this particular case, there's only 1 result back. So I want to be able to group. So I don't, if there's 5 repeatable IPs, a destination IP, I don't want to blocking 5. So I can aggregate that with a group option there. I can sum up, the different sources by counting. Summing up the count is total. And then there's other aggregated commands that can be or operators that can be operating on the various different columns. Right. So here I want to get the first of the known threads. So later that may be used in reporting purposes. And then I want to get the max, how many concurrent sources hitting the destination there. So this is a very simple wizard that allows you to do more or less no coding automation here. Next step, obviously, we want to go back to Devo to actually search for those IPs, right? So here we have a module already built. I showed it earlier. I'm simply searching for it, right? So there's the hunt module there. And with the module, you simply configure what's the connection, what's the input parameters here, and so on. All right, so this is actually issuing the secondary query back to Devo. If there's 5, then there's going to be 5 concurrent hit. Right? Of 10, there's 10 concurrent hit. And here we see there's 4 different unique sources hitting that destination. We want to be able to extract those in a bit. How do you extract an array? There's an operator called split array. You can searching for that operator. That's one of the most common ones, by the way. You choose that. You choose the JSON structure that have the JSON array, and then you give it a new name. You don't have to write a code to do this in Python. This is probably like 20 lines. You hit next, and then this will provide the result. There's four sources IPs. So you have 4 rows of data here, and the next thing is you extract the IP address, right? You simply highlight it. Here you can choose one to extract, or maybe you want to choose others. You can also choose multiple parameters or fields to select or to extract. You can do all those in 1 step or 10 steps. They're all up to you. Very simple to do. And then the next steps, obviously, once you have the source IP address here, what I'm trying to show there is to every step along the way, you should document it, give a proper name, and put in the description there. So later on, you come back to the playbook, you don't have to be confused yourself. Say, hey, what's that step supposed to do there? Next step, you just counting the quarantine. So you search if you have quarantine functions or actions, you can just simply searching it for it. Depends on what was configured. Here we have a module, but if there are other quarantine actions, they all can be picked from this list. And then if they have input requirements, and then you will just need to fill in the input here. Here I'm just choosing the generic quarantine modules here, and this is one side of the actions or tasks I need to perform as an analyst here. Right, so I mark that as one path, and then I'm going to go back to the previous steps to extract the destinations. I also need a block. So after a block, hopefully there's less, right? So here, simply highlight the field like I did before, and then once you have that destination IP address extracted, what you're going to do is just calling another module to say I want to block. And there's also a recommended option there recommendation that lists all the blocks that are possible with the platform, right? So all the various different integrations from different EDR tools and so on. So here I'm just choosing block IPs, right? And then here the block IP will need a input parameter, which is the parent node, which is the IP address to block, and then simply execute that to blocking it. And here, I'll mark this as another path that has to be complete, right? So this pretty much built up this whole playbook from scratch. Right? This took probably a couple minutes. And then if I go compare against the official edition of the playbook, so you can see, the only difference is the layout of the 2 branches. And after this, so what's next is you will configure this to run automatically, right? So this, I don't want to execute this manually, creating playbook manually again and again, right? You can configure this to run on a schedule, or you can configure this to run on a webhook, right? So webhook is more ad hoc execution versus time-based, where I'm going to execute this once a day, once an hour, and so on. So this options, calling a webhook is also available from Devo. You can configure deliveries method of HTTP. So from there, you can configure the URL and hitting LogicHub instead. With that, this concludes this demo session. In this demo, we just want to show the audience, a very simple automation and how we do low-code, automation. There are other features like case management system, integrations, all the deeper topics we'll cover in the future webinars. Would that be, Willie?
Great, thanks. A lot of good stuff to whet the appetite. We have a lot of good questions coming in, so let's jump right into the Q&A. And please keep the questions coming in. So first question, maybe Kumar, you can address this, or Monty. What programming language is used on the back end of these playbooks? Do we have the flexibility to write our own code for playbooks or automation? So you talked about no code and low code, but what are the other options here, Kumar?
That option is for the ninjas, and there is always one or two in every security team. And for those we have, if you can sling Python code literally at like 10 lines of Python code, you can pretty much integrate with any API. Right? So it's if you really are up for that, it's very much. And you can actually, Monty builds a lot of integrations by himself without involving the engineering team by basically starting an integration. So one, you can, if you have a very simple step, you can write 10 lines of Python code, but you can actually build a full-on integration to a product. Maybe you have a proprietary product, internal product. You can build the entire integration for it with 20, 30 lines of Python code.
Yeah,
so,
one thing.
Sorry, Stephen, go ahead, please.
One thing I'd love to add on to that too is, even though you have the option to do that via code, it's very comparable the way that Devo and LogicHub work at building things, easily. You don't have to drop the code, just like you don't have to necessarily know our query language. I think for the most part, you don't have to know code to use LogicHub. Certainly an option, but it's always good to realize that you have that easier path.
Yeah.
So the ninjas are welcome, but you don't have to have ninjas, right?
That's the goal.
Okay, so next question, what kind of threat intel is built in? Does the customer need to buy external threat sources? And maybe, again, Kumar, you can talk to that slide of all the logos you showed. I know there's a lot of things we can connect to.
I think the, in terms of SOAR capabilities, right, the posture we have taken is that we integrate with any and all threat intel platforms, right? And so most of the security teams that actually are even a little bit more than sophisticated, maybe in year 2, year 3 of their journey, right? If you're just starting on, you probably don't have very many rich sources of threat intel, but we want to leave the flexibility to customers. And Anomaly, for example, is a great partner, and I can think of like maybe 50, 60% of our customers use Anomaly and integration very, very deeply. And there are a bunch of other products, all sorts of threat intel products that we integrate with.
Yeah, and I think from the Devo side, for those customers already using Devo integrations for that, all the lookup tables you already used, all the automatic enrichment, that can all flow through to LogicHub. In the example we just showed you, we pulled in data in that query from a Devo enrichment. So whether you're enriching on the LogicHub side or enriching on the Devo side, you get the best of both worlds.
And I think it's fair to say most organizations have multiple threat sources, so we can seamlessly integrate all of them, right? Yeah. Which is even more powerful. Okay, so another good question here. Again, thanks for them. Keep them coming. This one I'll, again, steer to you, Kumar. So does the playbook allow for us to add some form of decision making? So you talked about decision automation. I know this is close to your heart, so maybe you can address this.
I think, I don't want to make that sound easy, but that particular question is really, really easy. Is like, for example, if API request code is 200, do some action, or else error notification. We do that all the time, right? From there to say, hey, all the very advances, like look at what this user has done over last 90 days. And if you think that their behavior is abnormal, like for some definition of abnormal, it take a certain action. So you can do all of that very easily within LogicHub.
Okay, so a couple questions here on getting access, and is this included with Devo or is this an add-on cost license, and how do we get access? So maybe I'll let you, either you, Stephen or Kumar, address that.
So this is an add-on, right? But I think, I mean, we are excited. This is meant for all Devo customers, right? So if you really want to get your hands on this, I mean, just reach out to any of us and we'll help you get started. I'm looking forward to, speaking to as many Devo customers as we can and help them get started with automation.
Absolutely.
And I assume that it's there's some level of integration today, and will this then be brought into the same platform eventually, or can you speak to how this will get closer and closer?
I mean, there is already a pretty tight integration because we have been working at multiple customers with Devo, right, even before the acquisition. So the integration is very close, but over time, a lot of these capabilities will become first-class citizen of the Devo platform. Right? So it's fully integrated. We don't have to hop between two screens even, or 2 pages or 2 tabs.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say from an integration standpoint, we're going to try to continue to keep as open of a platform as we possibly can. We want to be able to integrate with as many sources as possible. And in this case, I mean, this was a very recent relationship. The acquisition just occurred, and we've already got it, to Kumar's point, a very tight integration, very quick. I think it speaks to how easily you can build those integrations with LogicHub, and then, of course, the accessibility of Devo.
And of course, we'll continue to support other data sources as well. So if you have other SIMs or you have other data sources of any kind, we can integrate those on either end. Okay, so another one about playbooks. Does the playbook automatically loop through the JSON elements, or is there any way of adding loops to a playbook? So maybe Mati, can you address that one?
Yes, it will automatically, one step, it will automatically go through the JSON arrays. I mean, that's the power of this platform versus you write programs. You don't have to do all the data manipulations. Is 100x easier with this.
And I assume you can add any kind of loops you want or logic to this.
Yes, and you can also correlating with other tables, other data sources. So it's not limited just to from a SIM, right? You can join CSVs, you can query SQL servers, Oracle if you have it, other enrichment data. This platform supports all that correlation and joining without writing code.
So let me ask a broader question. Maybe you can just talk to it. Someone asked here, why is this better than other SIM or SOAR combinations? This is kind of broad, but you talked to a little bit. Lots of SIM vendors have bought SOARs. They put them together. But why is this combination better? Maybe Stephen, you can take a crack at that first.
Yeah, I think part of it we covered during there. It's really down to the ability to scale, right? There's been so much talk in the world about AI and how do we start to build these autonomous systems with large data sets that are just ginormous, right? And in order to do that, you have to have that platform be able to scale and pull in the data. And that's something that we do at Devo very, very well. Scale is like our bread and butter. It's core to the platform. And so that we can issue queries and get back large data sets and condense them down very, very quickly. As a result of that, it just totally empowers, something like LogicHub to start to take even more action and do it even faster. And I think as Kumar had said earlier, you want to start to be able to reduce the number of actions that those analysts have to take. And in this case, because the speed of the query is so fast, it actually kind of exponentially increases that, so that actually can multiplies out to an even larger, faster. Kumar, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think, one is the integration makes sense because the backend can scale, can perform, give the answers at a tremendous speed. And one of the things that is very unique about, I talked about in the whole presentation is the decision automation, the ability to make decisions. And what it does, it creates a confidence for the security operations team. They can actually, you wouldn't trust an automation if half the time it does what you want and half the time it doesn't, and people would not use it, right? So the decision automation is a very key. And the fact that we can deliver integrations, right, so much faster, right? And literally within couple of weeks, we can deliver an integration for a new product. That is a tremendous speed. Many of the other SOAR vendors might take months to deliver those new integrations.
All right. Well, there's a lot more we could talk to, but I think as you mentioned, we'll have many more upcoming webinars, more in-depth demos. We'd love to show it to you. A great closing question here. How do we get access? So first, I'd say talk to your customer success manager, of course, and we would love to show this to you. We also do have a free SOAR version. You can go to the LogicHub website and you can actually fire up an instance and start playing with it. There's some tutorials and things there. But either way, we'd love to show this to you and make it as easy for you to get access or to, demonstrate it in your live environments. Anything else there in terms of how we get access?
No, I think that covers it pretty well. I mean, reach out and let's set up a conversation. We'd love to.
Yep.
We'd love to walk you through that.
Great. All right. Well, I think on that note, we're a few minutes over time. Thank you to the audience for all the great questions. And of course, as we said, we'd love to tell you more. There'll be a broader webinar for the general public coming up later this week. So please join us for that. And we'll be recording many more demos. So thank you to Stephen and Kumar and Monty for the great information. And thank you to the audience. And we'll talk to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.